South Carolina is definitely Joe Biden's last stand. This is make or break for him. I mean, he's leading in the polls, but not by that much. I mean, it's much closer than it was several weeks ago. The momentum is all with Bernie Sanders, and so I think Senator Biden or former Vice President Biden really has to do well in South Carolina. I don't even think he can win it by a point. I think he's got to win it by a few to get any kind of momentum going into Super Tuesday. You know, there's different arguments about, who would be better against Trump. The traditional argument is Biden would always be the best one against Trump, and that's who the president was averse to facing. That's why the president is really supporting and supporting Bernie Sanders, or at least hoping Bernie Sanders wins, because that would be the easiest opponent. But I think you can't ignore Michael Bloomberg here too. I mean, I think he, being more of a moderate Democrat, a former Republican actually, he would probably fare better against Trump than the other candidates, because he doesn't hate capitalism. He's actually a capitalist and believes in America. So I think that might be a challenge for the president. But again, I think Bernie Sanders right now looks like the front runner, and that's probably the best person for the president to face. I don't think any of them can beat the president. Look, right now the polls suggest that only 43% would find that would have any appetite for a socialist. That doesn't mean that they would vote for him. It just means that most Americans are very averse to the idea. The only thing that the socialists have going for them and the support for Bernie is that America's never really experienced socialism like the UK has. So I think when you had Jeremy Corbyn running, memories aren't that short. I think this country experienced socialism and really was very much against it, didn't want to see a repeat of that. Whereas especially the younger voters in America, don't really know how bad socialism is. They don't really know any better. So they're actually, that's why you see young people rallying around Senator Sanders. I think it would be a disaster for America, but more importantly, be a disaster for the Democrat Party. Some of the candidates will be dropping out. We should see some surprises. It's really hard to call right now because understand, everybody but Bernie is bunched in a very small group. If you look at the polls in South Carolina, yes, it has Biden leading Senator Sanders by 3 points. But if you look at the national polls, it's Bernie and it's everybody else. So I think you'd hope that there would be a breakout candidate, someone that can take on Senator Sanders. But at this point, it looks like there is no real breakout star here. It might be Biden after South Carolina, but the trend is not good for him. He doesn't look good in his press conferences. He doesn't look good in his speeches, and his numbers are going the wrong way. But one argument you could make for everybody but Bernie is that they are bunched together. Collectively, their votes are very much an anti-Bernie vote. So maybe you see a breakout candidate after South Carolina and Super Tuesday. Yeah, look, I don't think there's any one candidate that would do really well against the president, because the president's numbers have been improving. Impeachment was a complete disaster for the Democrats. It boomeranged against him. His numbers went up. I think you have to also look at the fact that during impeachment, not only did his approval numbers go up, but he got 600,000 new donors. So money's important here. You can't argue with the fact that Bloomberg has a lot of money. So that might be the greatest strength that he has, or the greatest strength that any candidate has. Senator Sanders very well might win more delegates, but not win the majority of delegates. And that's an important difference. If he goes into the convention with not enough delegates to lock up the nomination, but more delegates than anybody else, that could create a pretty volatile situation. Remember, they used to have superdelegates where you had the power figures in the party with an outsized influence over the nomination. They did away with that after Hillary Clinton won in 2016, and a lot of that is because the Bernie supporters were so annoyed. Remember, 13% of Bernie supporters voted for Trump in the general election. So this could be really controversial. It will definitely show the split in the Democratic Party. I think so many of the Democrats have moved to the far left anyway. I think the moderate lane candidates would be better off with more moderate, sane, and common sense policies, but none of them seem to be doing that. They seem to be influenced by Senators Biden and Warren and moving to the left. If they continue to do this and nobody busts out, nobody's able to show a credible competitive threat to Senator Bernie Sanders, you could see a brokered convention that will completely blow up the Democratic Party. I mean, the economy is always significant, and if the economy is cratering, yeah, that's never good for an incumbent president. Barack Obama won re-election in 2012 in spite of an anemic recovery, but that's because incumbents always have a very great advantage over their competitors or over their challengers. So, the only time an incumbent loses in U.S. elections is once someone in their own party runs against them in the primaries. That has not happened with President Trump. So things are looking good. He still has all the advantages of incumbency, but look, the economy is important, and coronavirus will definitely have an effect. But I think he's just got to do a good job of articulating the relative strength of the U.S. economy. We don't know what's going to happen, by the way. It's still early. But right now, the U.S. economy has outperformed the global economy. It's surely outperformed Europe. So I think that's what he has to rest on. There are a lot of similarities between the U.S. election and the U.K. elections that occurred in December. Jeremy Corbyn and Bernie Sanders have a lot of similarities. I think they're both disasters for their parties. I think one of the differences is the U.S. doesn't follow the U.K. elections quite as much as the other way around. So it might come as a surprise to a lot of American voters when Bernie Sanders has a really bad, negative effect on his party. It's not just that he'll lose dramatically in the general election, but also that the candidates on the ticket, down ticket, you're going to see perhaps the House flip back to the Republicans, and you'll see a couple of Senate seats being picked up by Republicans if Bernie Sanders is on the head of the ticket. This was a complete disaster for Jeremy Corbyn and Labour, as we know here in the UK. They are very similar, not just that their focus and their support of socialism and Marxism, but their real disdain for their own countries. And I think, look, the UK and the US are patriotic places. They're people with optimism. And when someone that's the leader of the party, of one of the two great parties in the country, comes out and supports the enemies of the country quite dramatically, not only 20, 30 years ago, but more recently with both Jeremy Corbyn as well as Bernie Sanders. That's a disaster it was a disaster for Labor. It will be a disaster for the Democrats, and I think it would be a very favorable outcome for Republicans.